And that is such a great point, Ed, because we see the end result of it, which is so shocking. How does this person do this? But this has been going on, as we know now, for a couple of years. And so it's kind of like all of a sudden getting a picture of a relationship that's been going on for all this time that we've had no experience with, no insight to, no ability to see any of this. We're seeing the end of it.
I got to stop us right this second because I got to tell you, this whole time that you and I and Ed have been speaking, we weren't live. We just went live just now.
Oh,
so we got to start over.
Okay.
Technical difficulties. What happened was my computer restarted and I had two screens open, so I didn't hit the go live button. So all of what we just spoke about was recorded on our StreamYard, but we got to start over. So guys and girls, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon, Ed Wallace, and Dr. Joni Johnston. This is a first for me ever, and I have 1,200 live streams under my belt that I had a second window open and I did not press the go live button. So let's just say hello to all the Patreon supporters, the channel members. We have to start over. We're starting from the beginning. Guys, again, this is kind of odd and off-putting for me, but we have to do it. So I just noticed it. That's why I took myself off the screen with you guys, because I saw something was up and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So thank you, guys. We are going to be doing a show tonight with a forensic psychologist, Dr. Joni Johnston. She's joining us. We were live talking to ourselves for a little while. I will upload this as part of our little blooper show at the end, but we did have about a 7-minute conversation to just no air. But I want to say thank you to our Patreon supporters, the channel members, the moderators. We have one of the best communities on YouTube. We're going to be talking about Casey White and Vicky White. These are the two that captured not only the United States, but worldwide attention for breaking out of a Alabama jail and going on the run for 11 days. And there was quite a bit of inmate manipulation that went on behind the scenes in this case, but there's just so many unanswered questions. Why would a corrections professional with just so many years invested in the correction field go so wrong? And that's what we want to talk about tonight with our special guest. So Doc, again, I'm sorry. If you could go back over your credentials with the audience. We're going to try this again, but I guarantee you we are live.
That was our dress rehearsal. Let's just think of it that way.
And we were doing so good.
We were kind of on a roll. So as Ron mentioned, I am a clinical and forensic psychologist and private investigator. And I started out working with victims and did that for many years. And then about 10 years ago, began working with offenders, not so much from a therapeutic standpoint, but from an evaluation standpoint. So I'm always looking at things like violence risk. Is this person ready to be released from parole? Is this person who committed a crime as a juvenile the same person they are now in their 40s? Is there a chance they should be released, and all those kinds of things? I also just wanted to mention that I spent 2 years inside of a medium maximum security prison. So I do have, I think, somewhat of an inside look of what it's like to work in that environment on a regular basis, which is one of the reasons this case really did fascinate me.
Doc, I have a good grasp, and so does Ed, what a forensic psychologist does, right? But could you just explain to the audience, because there may be some folks outside of the United States that really don't have a good grasp of what you guys do. If you could just give a little bit.
Absolutely. It's actually a relatively new subspecialty, and a lot of people don't understand that. So I totally understand that. So basically, forensic psychologists deal with any area where there is a legal issue that also has a psychological question. And that could be anything from, was this person criminally responsible? Or, is this a civil suit where we're looking at injuries or emotional distress claims? So anytime there is an overlap between psychology and law, that's where you see forensic psychology come in.
Fascinating, fascinating. And Ed, I know you have a family member who's studying in the practice. If you could stop laughing, Ed, I would really appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
I find it very comical what happened 7 minutes. I almost want to play the intro right now to make it official.
Wait, let me hit my reverse button and I'll pull it out of my brain. Okay. Yeah. So what Ron was talking about is my niece, my goddaughter is a PhD candidate in forensic psychology. She's going to be defending her thesis pretty soon down in Florida, and she'll be practicing forensic psychology, just like our esteemed guests.
You know, it's funny because I look at the comments, I look at all of the feedback on Crime Time with DutyRon and DutyRon.com, and you know, overwhelming majority of folks in the audience want to see and want to hear what a forensic psychologist has to say. But there was just a very small percentage of people who were naysayers who said they don't know anything, they don't know what they're talking about. You have anything for the naysayers, Doc, about your profession? Because I have a lot of respect for it, and I really appreciate what all the forensic psychologists do across the globe, for that matter. And you do interview, you do have the parolees that are ready to be released that you interview and talk to. So, you have anything to say to the naysayers out there?
Don't give up on us, I guess would be one thing that I would say. Have faith that we'll eventually, provide a lot more value than maybe we are now. But I do think that, it's a relatively, as I mentioned earlier, relatively new specialty area. And I think that because of that, there were some findings early on about criminal profiling and how accurate that was or inaccurate that was, that I do think we've had a lot of growing pains in terms of really recognizing and understanding what forensic psychology can do. And that involves, like, for example, predicting risk. And that's something that we are notoriously have a hard time with.
Yeah.
How do we predict people's behavior? It's so complicated, right? Things change. So I think we're getting a lot better at that, and we're being able to define those variables and those kinds of things. But I think we have a ways to go. And I think that we need to always be humble and be aware of that.
Yeah. And I have training with the behavioral profile section of the FBI, and some of their profilers that were there, that led to things like Silence of the Lambs and that whole series of books about Dr. Lecter and so forth. And yes, and many people disparage the profiling, psychological profiling and so forth. But I found in many cases that it's been helpful.
Yeah.
So, and that's what my niece is looking to do. She wants to become a forensic profiler.
And I think it's important also to understand what it can do and what it can't, right? Like, it can help us narrow down a suspect pool, for example, but it's not ever going to be something we can kind of go, aha, this is the answer. This is the 100% solution.
Yeah, it's just like watching CSI shows on television. I look at it and I laugh, and I know there's a lot of fiction in what they're portraying,
Yes.
and there's not a lot of reality, and it ends up impacting the real forensic science work that we do, especially when we go to trial.
Yeah,
So what I did mention before we were not live and when we thought we were live is, there's a component of this escape, which is tremendous amount of inmate manipulation. Vicky White was an administrator. She was high up second in charge in the facility. Nobody suspected her. Nobody thought that she would do anything like this. As we saw, there was a funeral service for her just over the weekend, and hundreds of her coworkers came out. And that's a testament to what type of person she was, that before this whole incident took place in their minds. But my question is kind of, how can a 2-year relationship that she was having subtly back and forth with this inmate go undetected? And that's the question that many people have. Doc, do you have any thoughts on that?
I tell you, that is one of the most puzzling things for me. And I think it maybe speaks to some of the administrative issues in this prison. I was kind of floored in this jail. I was kind of floored that she actually visited him in another prison. And I know, having worked in a county system as well as a state system, that sometimes there's not an overlap between, jails versus prisons. But for nobody to notice that or it not to come to the surface over a 2-year period is really, it's surprising, and it's just puzzling to me. I mean, that does speak to some checks and balance failures, more than I think it does personality or psychology. It's kind of like, where's all the, controls that need to be in place for these kind of things.
And in all fairness to the facility, it's a 48-member facility, so it's not like a Rikers Island.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of misinformation. And Doc, what you just said was a little bit of what we were getting. They said that she visited Casey White in the state, but in fact, she didn't do that. She was communicating with him, but that was not your fault. That was the fault of the actual prison authorities. Sheriff Singleton was he put that out and then retracted it. The news and the media went and just ran with it, and some stations retracted it. Ed and I were on that bumpy roller coaster ride of misinformation, and that's what also adds to another element of this, of frustration for everybody, from the investigators straight through to forensic psychologists like yourself, because we all scratch our head, right Ed?
Yeah, there was a lot of misinformation that was given, but it seems like her relationship was over 2 years, and most of it was telephonic. I mean, she was calling him while he was in that prison and having conversation. It also appears that she was contacting his relatives. So there were some communications reported between Casey and between Vicky and Casey's relatives outside of prison.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And we talked about this before we went live, Doc. The biscuits and the extra things that she was giving him, extra time out of his cell. He even had Sheriff Singleton gave a walkthrough to, I think, 3 networks, CNN, Fox, and Newsnation, or at least 3 that I know of. And he had the best window. He had double windows in his cell overlooking the rec room. So, like things like that is, it's baffling in a small facility that to not go, to be undetected. I sense that some of her staff knew something was not right, but because she was the big boss, they kind of kept their mouth shut.
Yeah.
Which is very common. And of course I don't think anybody who's worked in a prison system would not expect other inmates to be waving a red flag and saying something is wrong here. I can remember a couple of times, being interviewing somebody and feeling a kite go across my leg as I'm interviewing them, and nobody would say a word. You just kind of ignore that. So I think from an inmate standpoint, we all understand why that wouldn't happen. And the fact that she's in that kind of power position, I think would discourage anybody from drawing attention to these irregularities or some of the things that you do. But clearly, that at least the other inmates were aware as it's come out since then.
And it's that code of silence in prison, right? Snitches get stitches. All right. So,
yeah. I have a small Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
No. Go with the clip.
I have a small clip from Newsnation. Our good friend Brian Enton was on with us recently. This is not his piece, but it's about inmate manipulation. And one of our good friends who also has Tier Talk podcast, the YouTube channel, he's been on with us, Anthony Gangi. He has a book on inmate manipulation. He is an inmate. He's a correction executive. So I want to play this little piece. It's about 5 minutes long. I don't think I'll play the whole thing, but I'm going to share it. We'll go full screen it, and then I want to get your thoughts on this, Doc.
Okay.
Inmate manipulation and what is really happening behind prison walls. It is something many of us are talking about right now after Casey White escaped from jail in Alabama with the help of corrections officer Vicky White. Now we know the two were in a romantic relationship for about 2 years before being captured in Indiana last week following a car chase. Vicky shot herself, likely took the truth of what really went on between them to the grave. And while you don't hear much about these types of jailhouse relationships, it does not mean that they're not happening, romantic and otherwise. Anthony Gangi has seen it all, and he is the author of the book Correctional Manipulation. Anthony, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. So inmate manipulation, there's even a term about some of the games that they play, and you call it downing a duck. What exactly does that mean?
Well, downing a duck is really taking advantage of a staff member that may be a little bit too gullible or naive to the complexity of inmate manipulation. So be advised, when it comes to inmate manipulation, the game is very subtle. And if you go in 100% wanting to help the inmate without being defined by the prescribed roles of the agency, the inmate is going to find a way to take advantage of that want to help.
Well, answer me this. Why are some staff members willing to take that risk? Because I'm sure that they know going in that the risk is there, what's happening behind those walls. What's the most common reason that they get involved with these inmates and help them?
I think their loyalty shifts. I think the inmate gets them to minimize the consequences by building a trust with them. I mean, most of the time, the external incentive not to do something is usually based on not getting caught, which isn't strong enough when inmate is able to challenge that. You need the internal incentive that I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, as opposed to I'm doing the right thing because I don't want to go to jail. If an inmate is able to minimize that external incentive, if they're able to build a trust and at the end of the day tell you, don't worry, I won't report it, well, now the external justification holds no weight. Now it's more about what your values are. And at that point, basing it on external justifications, there are none.
What are some of the ways that inmates use these relationships, build that trust to their advantage? What do they do?
Well, it's usually slow and subtle. I mean, you're going to look for vulnerabilities. The first thing they're going to check at is someone's disposition. One thing, what is their defined purpose? Can I pull them out of the prescribed role? Can I isolate them? I mean, another thing they look at is the environment. And if you have an environment that isn't complacent, then, inmates are going to say, well, this isn't going to be worth the effort. But if you have an environment that's lax and it kind of shows to be more of a resource, then the problem is you're not setting enough obstacles up to prevent the inmate from employing the game. And one last thing, too, the interaction with inmates have increased a lot more than ever done before. So with that said, with the increased level of interactions, we have to be always on point when it comes to where we're allowing that dialogue to go. If the inmate is able to connect with us on a personal level, it's easier for them to pull us out of our prescribed role because we no longer see them as an inmate, because we ourselves no longer see ourselves as defined by the trusted role we're meant to serve.
Anthony, as we look at these pictures of...
Well, that was unbelievable what he just said there. And so true, Doc, right? Once you let somebody, when you're in a position of power and authority, become on a personal level, yes, communicate with you, the upper hand is with the, in this case, the perpetrator here. Any thoughts on what Anthony said there?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely true. And I think we see that, and a lot of times that's part of the goal of the manipulation, is to start kind of changing that power dynamic where it becomes more of a peer relationship. The boundaries kind of go down. The inmate's a very good listener. He listens, he's also not only listening to that person, but has his ear to the ground of what's going on. Getting to know the corrections officers. It's all part of that manipulation. And it just becomes, I think, very, and then of course, like you said, once that line is crossed, once that custody officer, prison employee, or whatever starts taking those baby steps. I've never been a big fan of the kind of slippery slope, because it seemed kind of dramatic to me a lot of times, and it's used to kind of for political reasons. But I think that's definitely true in these relationships. It doesn't start out, will you help me escape? It starts out little bitty things, let me see if I can get you to break a small rule. What happens if I brush up against you? Well, just casually, what will you do? And if you don't react in the way that a custody officer would act, there we go. There's my entry. Now I'm in a tiny bit more. And over a 2-year period, we can only imagine we see how far that went.
Is there a specific profile or that people like Vicky fit into in terms of this? Because we've seen cases like this before. While it's not all that common, we've seen correctional officers and civilian correctional employees do similar things.
I think a lot of times it is, we have this manipulative inmate who's already looking for somebody who's vulnerable. And I think, and this may get some interesting comments, which I hope we do get some interesting comments, because I think we all want to believe that would never be me. And it may not ever be you. I mean, we might never fall for Casey White's manipulation. But there is such research that shows that a lot of times it's not so much the personality of the correctional officer or the prison employee as much as it is the situation that person is in. Whether it's they're grieving, they've gone through a divorce, they're lonely, they're spending, they're doing a bunch of double shifts, so they have no home life. There's a vulnerability there on the part of that corrections officer, or again, or prison employee or prison psychologist or whatever, that somehow cracks open that door.
Yeah.
And that person sees it and then starts wiggling their way in.
Ed, you and I talked about this on previous live streams. She was divorced, and her husband had ailing health, and she was his primary caregiver in her home that she sold for less than half of what the market value was of that home. And as we come to know, that was all part of this grand scheme of the breakout to have that fundage. Doc, could that be a major play here with Casey White, him knowing and having an open line of communication with her, knowing about the situation of her husband who died in January? He passed away in January, and him using that to his advantage?
I think that's definitely could be a factor here. Let me say a couple of things. I know this is such a great show based on a police perspective, and I'm coming from a forensic psychology perspective. And my job is never to excuse behavior, to excuse doing bad things. But it is to understand them. So ultimately, we can prevent those things from happening. And I definitely think when I read about Vicky, there were so many things that stood out. One, of course, being that she and her ex-husband lived together up until he died. So she, it sounds like, was in somewhat of a caretaker role. We don't know how long he had Parkinson's disease, but I would imagine over a pretty long period of time. Her mom at one point says that Vicky's life at this point was essentially coming home to her house after work, having dinner, and taking her dog for a walk, and that was it. Several employees said, Vicky was the salt of the earth, but she wasn't somebody who talked a lot. She wasn't somebody who had a lot of friends and would disclose her struggles or what she was going through. In this, you get this picture of somebody who is very nurturing of other people, doesn't ask for or know how to get a lot of nurturing for herself. Now she's gone through a loss. And I think it kind of became a perfect storm in some ways.
Is there a part of this that can kind of fit like the Florence Nightingale syndrome?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Another thing that kind of comes out about Vicky is some of the corrections officers, which I can only imagine the devastation that they felt and the betrayal, which is something we haven't talked about. But several of them talked about her being a mom figure to them, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have somebody who likes being in that kind of mom role or whatever, that can easily translate into kind of a rescue role for a lot of different people. I'm collecting people that need me, that I need, that I kind of need to rescue in some way. And that can definitely kind of play into it. I'm going to fix this person, help this person's vulnerable or whatever. And all kinds of things can start going on in that person's mind.
So she had some needs and some wants that weren't being fulfilled. And Casey found that out and took advantage of it.
I really think he did. And it becomes confusing, I think, sometimes. I've seen several comments, not necessarily on this show, but on other things I've been on, where people have said she knew exactly what she was doing. And she did know exactly what she was doing. I mean, she participated and did most of the planning. So the fact that, she at some point was all in terms of, I'm going to sell my house, get my money, break you out of jail, close all these doors that have been important to me, my career, my friends, my family, whatever. She was all in. That's not saying, however, that there wasn't this emotional vulnerability. And that part of it, I don't think she was in control of. I think that was Casey White driving that show.
Yeah. Hey, I have a quick question for you, Doc. And I'm just trying to get these all out of my head here, just off the bat, because I have them committed to memory. Were you surprised as we were from the law enforcement community, that Casey didn't kill her after she broke him out of jail and they stayed together 11 days? They were in a hotel for, at least 6 days. Was that surprising to you from the forensic psychology side?
It was not super surprising to me. And there's a practical part of that. And there is, I guess, more of a psychological part of that. practical part of it is, she still has some money. She still has a car. He could still use her in some respects, whether that's approaching a homeless person to rent a hotel for them. And there's all kinds of things that she could do. He could be in a wheelchair. She could be pushing him. So there's a practical part where he might not have been ready to let go of that. And I think the other part of it is, absolutely. Do I think that Casey White manipulated her to do exactly what he wanted to do? Yes.
Yeah.
Could he have still had some feelings for her? Yeah, I think he could have. And so,
we also heard when he was dragged out of that car, he called her his wife. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's just, him being a narcissist and taking control, or having a way to control her. But he did say it more than once, check on my wife, check on my wife.
My wife shot herself. My wife shot herself. Maybe in his mind, they, this was their honeymoon, and they spent, they rented the room for 14 days.
Yeah. And it's not hard to think, even though we see clearly who has the potential to get the most gain out of the situation, that is not an equal playing field. It certainly is possible that he had some fantasies of his own. Now, my worry, of course, and I know yours as law enforcement officers, would be how long would this fantasy last on his side?
Right.
I mean, that's a concern going forward.
Right.
But I wasn't surprised at 2 weeks, until she became difficult, or, outserved her purpose, or I would imagine it would probably be some kind of interpersonal conflict that would trigger him more than anything else to get rid of her.
But my line of thinking, and I think, Ed, you felt the same way, is that, most of these guys who are in prison for extended periods of time, and he spent a great deal of time in prison, in and out and whatnot. Most of the times they have like a pen pal or significant other that writes in, or somebody who they were with before they got locked up. And once they get broken out, or once they get out, they go back to those folks. And that's what I thought, is that he was going to use her. And I was 100% wrong, because I kept saying it, he's going to probably kill her. They go right back to who they were comfortable with. But in this case, it seems like they really did build a 2-year relationship, and he kept her. He kept her around, and A, she had the money. B, she had weapons that she provided him with for his protection and for them to have. And who knows how long this could have went on for? But my guess would have been that he would have reunited with his friends and female friends on the outside and said, what, I'm 38, she's 56, I got no use for her. But that was, I guess, not the case.
Maybe there was delusions of Bonnie and Clyde here.
It's so interesting, Ed, that you said that, because I made that same comment to a colleague of mine, that there's a kind of an odd feel to this, in terms of, like, a Bonnie and Clyde, we're going to go out in this blaze of glory if we get caught, right? If we don't get caught, great. We're going to live happily ever after. Maybe we're going to get out, have this fantasy going where we can somehow make it to wherever we're going or whatever. But I think there was a very, very clear, almost a pact on the part of the two. It seemed to me that we are not going to be captured. We are going to, together, we're going to die together. We're going to get in this big police shootout and go out just like Bonnie and Clyde did.
I think that was their plan. I believe they discussed that. But, I gave them too much credit for planning. I thought they were going to head south and get to the border and get across there into Mexico, maybe down into South America, to a non-extradition country. And, with all the money she got gathered up, and then try to live their lives down there. But apparently, I gave them way too much credit to, spend 14 days in a Indiana hotel, and leave your car in the car wash area for anybody to steal and see and figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
It almost makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, what was the end plan? Because they are not making every effort that they could have to get away. They aren't heading to Mexico. They aren't heading to Canada. They aren't driving through the night to do all these different things. So it does make you kind of wonder about that.
I initially saw the truck in the car wash as a diversion tactic. In other words, leave it there with the keys and someone's going to steal it, because it was a kind of a iffy neighborhood. Like, it wasn't high crime, but it was somewhere in between. There was a little bit of element of shade into that area a little bit, but the way he malingered there and walked around, and like it wasn't like he dumped it and got out of there quick. He was putting the guns and loading the guns into his pants and looking around, and he left a Glock speed loader in behind, and then she took her time with coming up to get him. I want to play a little clip from CNN. This is the sheriff talking about special relationships, and I want to talk to you when we come back about inmate special relationships, not just only with guards, but with their pen pals and things of that nature, and what you've seen over the course of your time. So I'm going to play this on the screen. It's only 2 minutes, so let me just add this and play.
Friday morning, the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office says Assistant Director Vicky White told her coworkers she was taking inmate Casey White to the county courthouse for a mental health evaluation. Investigators say security video shows the pair never arrived at the courthouse, and no evaluation or court appearance was even scheduled. Several hours later, White's patrol car was found abandoned in a shopping center parking lot less than a mile away from the detention facility.
We've gotten a couple of tips on a possible vehicle. We're still pursuing that.
CNN got a first-hand look at security procedures inside the detention center.
You can see how all this works for security at every single level. You have to radio in.
The sheriff says Vicky White actually violated protocol when she removed Casey White from the detention facility.
This is the hallway where the inmate will walk down. We'll go through this door to a sally port where they'll be loaded into a car. Normally, it's 2 deputies per van, but this time it was just the deputy and the inmate.
The sheriff says since Vicky White is in charge of the detention center, no one questioned her. Investigators say they still have no evidence of a relationship between them.
We're still looking into that, reviewing phone calls, reviewing video from the jail.
The sheriff's office says last week, after about 2 decades with the department, Vicky White put in her retirement papers. Friday was supposed to be her last day.
I'd be surprised if we're still in Alabama. If she did this willingly, all indications are that she did. I guess we're trying to hold on to that last straw of hope that maybe for some reason she was threatened and did this under coercion. But absolutely, you feel betrayed.
Casey White was already serving 75 years for a rash of crimes. Next month, he's scheduled to go on trial on 2 counts of capital murder for the stabbing death of Connie Ridgway in 2015. Tonight, investigators are hopeful he'll soon be back behind bars.
Keep in mind that Casey White is a large individual. He is 6 feet 9 inches tall. He will stand out.
Said it's the funny thing about the internet is I had that saved, and it said the sheriff makes comment about special relationship, but that wasn't the piece. But we heard it. We all heard him say they had a special relationship. She gave him special privileges. She, let him get extra out time and gave him, jobs that were more desirable within the jail. And knowing that, that's all part of his plan. Any thoughts on that, Doc?
One of the things that really struck me in hearing about some of those extra privileges is some of them seem so trivial, I think, on the outside looking in, but having, worked in a prison for a couple of years, I mean, those are huge things. They're huge things in terms of violations, which are just incredibly taboo to show that kind of favoritism to another inmate. And they are things that are so valuable. And so, those are things that would be not only, something that he would want, but very symbolic of that relationship, because that is such a clear breach of protocol to have that kind of favoritism and be given those kind of favors. And those are things that people fight over, whether it's a pack of cigarettes or an extra biscuit or whatever, they're currency, right, in prison, and they have on a different meaning.
Yeah. And it was shocking to hear about that after the fact. And a lot of people felt, the prison officials, like the sheriff, whose the responsibility is pretty much all on him, had they had known about that in advance, why didn't they do anything about it? But in fact, we don't know if they did know about this and if they were very good at hiding it. And I think that'll come out in the, weeks or years, months to come, when this investigation continues on. I'm sure that there'll be higher ups. I'm surprised that we didn't hear something from the governor or the attorney general on this. Alabama does things maybe a little differently than here in the Northeast and on the West Coast. But I know if it happened here, our governor would be chiming in, our attorney general, and there would be all types of internal investigations. Ed, anything on that side?
No, that's 100% right. I mean, there'd be a full-blown internal affairs investigation. There'd be financial investigations. Then there would be, predictably, changes to protocols and procedures.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, Doc, somebody asked in the chat, do forensic psychologists prescribe medication? Do you answer to that?
I can easily answer that because the answer is no. So if you are a forensic psychologist, you have a PhD, but not an MD. So it takes a psychiatrist to prescribe medication.
There you go. I kind of knew the answer to it, but I wanted the professional to answer that. We have a lot of people in the chat. There's over 1,000 folks here. Even though we started with 7 minutes of really good conversation between Ed, the doctor, and myself, that was all on deaf ears. So I apologize for the delayed start. Again, my computer restarted prior to the stream going live, and I had 2 screens open, and the StreamYard screen that I hit go live with did not go live. So apologies there, but I want to look to the chat and say thank you to everybody for positively engaging. And here is Anthony from Tier Talk, the gentleman that we saw on that Newsnation piece. He says that he wore a tie for that because usually when he comes on my show, he's got a ripped shirt and raggy jeans. So thank you for dressing up for the real news. And when you come on Prime Time with DutyRon, you look like a hobo. So it's all good. I won't against you.
Hey, folks in the chat, do you have any questions for our esteemed guest here? Please post it so we can ask the good doctor.
Absolutely. I do have another Newsnation. This one is actually relevant. So, Ed, if you could look at the chat, this is about Vicky White's double life revealed. And then we'll be able to talk on this. And I promise this is going to be exactly what it's stating. So I'm going to play this real quick, and then we're going to scan the chat for some of the questions for the doctor. All right, here we go.
Dangerous, unpredictable, and on the run. Police are warning everyone tonight, nationwide.
Again, this is old video. They are captured, so do not get scared that they're back out. This is old video, folks.
On the lookout. Good evening to you. I'm Marnie Hughes. This is a special edition of Newsnation Prime for you tonight. 1 hour focused on this case and this manhunt, with new information and exclusive interviews that you have never seen before now. Vicky White, a former Alabama corrections officer who isn't who people thought she was, and Casey White, a murder suspect who is much more evil than anyone could have imagined. This is an unlikely pair caught up in a web of lies and deceit. She had everyone fooled. He has nothing to lose. It has been 7 days since she broke him out of jail in Alabama, and they could be anywhere. And no sign of these fugitives.
My gut is telling me that they're obviously on the run, and that they're probably right now. I think the fact that they abandoned this car so quick and where they abandoned it, I think it threw them a curve. I don't think they planned for that.
They could be anywhere right now, and until they are caught, no one is safe. I want to bring in
Lauderdale County, Alabama, had such a secret dark side.
What is Vicky like?
Okay, so this is the district attorney. I fast forwarded to this part because this is relevant. He is asked about what Vicky is like.
Solid was my word for her. So when this happened, it was such a shock. But she was not a big talker, is not a big talker, but got things done.
Lauderdale County District Attorney Chris Connolly.
Doc, what's your thoughts on that? His remark to that question was solid and that she was not a big talker. Is this a profile of a quiet person doing something like this?
I think it is. I mean, I don't think this is a person who for 16 years or however long she worked at this corrections facility has been fantasizing about this or fantasizing about being a criminal or whatever. I mean, I was kind of amazed. I know her funeral, I think, was today or yesterday. And I was just amazed at the number and diversity of people who were speaking on her behalf or for her. And that included former prison inmates. It included, coworkers. It included family. It included friends. I think this is somebody who was a solid person for a long period of time, maybe 14 years, before the 2 years where she, meets this guy and begins this kind of fantasy relationship that, ends in such horrible consequences. I don't think that this is a person who was different than she appeared for a long period of time in her life.
Ed, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Given the amount of correctional personnel that showed up at her funeral, they saw the good side in her, and I guess they forgave her for betraying the badge and so forth in those last 2 years of her career. Doc, there's some questions here. If you mind, Ron, I'll ask a few of them.
Yeah.
One was, okay. So what were your thoughts on why Vicky did this? Somebody was saying they'd like to hear your thoughts on why Vicky did this.
Yeah, that is a great question. I'll answer it as best I can, because obviously the only person who knows this is no longer around to tell us. But
exactly,
unfortunately, and so we'll never know. But my sense is this is somebody who has been lonely for a pretty long period of time. Has been probably depressed. She's getting older. She's getting ready to retire. Her significant other, who's still living in her house, she's caretaking and then dies. And I think that she meets this person who, pays her attention. I'm also envisioning him somehow being able to open her up and getting her to talk to him, which we've already heard. This is somebody who doesn't do that. Her mom said she never mentioned retirement. I mean, her mom didn't seem to know some of the things that we would expect a mom to have some idea of. Right. And so I think that, I think this is a person who keeps everything in, is probably more comfortable giving to other people than she is receiving. That's kind of been her pattern. And she reaches slowly this kind of crisis state in her life. And so I think this evolution did happen over a couple of period of years. I wonder if the death of her ex-husband in January may have sped things up a little bit in terms of, okay, I've reached the point where I am ready. I have nothing left, basically. And I'm willing to give the little bit I have left away. I mean, it struck me so clearly that she closes every door in her life, basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, she sells her house, mm-hmm. right? She's leaving. She retires from her job. She doesn't tell any of her friends or family. I mean, she has what does she have now? It did not surprise me at all that she committed suicide when they were captured, because I got that feeling like she is literally not leaving herself, I think, in her mind, any other option at that point. It's kind of like, this is going to work. And if it doesn't, nothing matters anymore.
Right. They were going to go out in that blaze of glory.
That's right.
And when the car accident happened, that option is out the window. And now they know they're being captured and he's giving up. She shoots herself.
Yeah. And I mean, did she have second thoughts at the last minute? It sounds like maybe she did. She makes this 911 call and she's talking about the airbags going off or whatever. So, it may be at the last minute, but when it came down to it, I think the thought for her of facing the consequences of what she had done, facing, her parents or her mom, facing her coworkers, facing criminal charges, being in, jail or prison herself, that just, I don't think was an option for her.
Okay. Janice Martin writes, when evaluating Casey, would you ever immediately notice his physical stature and think maybe he has a pituitary tumor, or now we're getting into medical issues, forget it, I can't even pronounce it. Maybe it could play into his personal and personality and predict and predicate the future, predict future. Yeah.
So I can just say a couple of quick things about that. I'm not a medical doctor. Let me preface with that. Nor do I play one on TV. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously there's some things that could have been going on with him. I mean, I know he has a history of kind of poor impulse control, problems with rage or whatever, it does make me wonder other things like, does this guy have a history of head injury? Was he exposed to drugs and alcohol growing up? I mean, there's all kinds of factors that could shape who he is. But to date, I don't know very much about this man other than his criminal history.
Yeah, and you think
which is
that,
significant.
you think that there would have been some medical tests and everything done on him when he entered the system to see, what his needs were medically and so forth. Anyhow, let's see what else.
I wanted to play the rest of the district attorney speaking because he said something about her being calculated and that, she was very organized and things of that nature. But I just wanted the audience to hear, these are her coworkers. This is a very small place and everybody knows everybody in Lauderdale County.
Solid was my word for her. So when this happened, it was such a shock. But she was not a big talker, is not a big talker, but got things done.
Lauderdale County District Attorney Chris Connolly has worked with Vicky for 16 years.
It's like the stages of grief. You say this unbelievable, this didn't happen, and then you get to the point where I am now, which I'm mad that she did this.
Inmates inside the jail are also shocked. This woman just bonded out. Did you ever get a weird vibe from her when you were in jail?
No, not at all. Like she, no, I never did. I never thought that she would, break any kind of rules like that. She was the person you could go to if you were having problems with any kind of COs or anything like that.
Having been in jail, are you surprised that she was able to get him out like that?
No. Mm-mm.
Why not?
Because it's chaos here.
Detectives are piecing together the days before Vicky vanished within.
So she said she was not surprised that she was able to get him out. But what I wanted to say to you, Doc, is there was another piece, and I can't find it, but I watched it over and over again. It was an attorney, a legal aid attorney, who was walking on the street, and Brian Enton interviewed her, and he asked her about some of her last conversations with her, and she said the night before this happened, she spoke to Vicky, and Vicky said that, she was showing, talking to her about that she wishes she could do more for the inmates that were having a difficult time. Could she be the type personality where she wants to try to fix people, or, just very nurturing? And look, she stayed with her husband, who she was divorced from, and was his caregiver in his final, years or whatever months, however long his illness was. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and not just my thoughts, but I mean, we've heard that over and over from people. We've heard that, she did take care of her ex-husband. Her, former mother-in-law spoke highly of her, which, sometimes is not always the case, right?
Yeah.
We talked about, how many corrections officers said that she was kind of a mother figure to some of the, other corrections officers. Former inmates talked about how they could go to her if there was a problem with, another CO. So clearly this is somebody who is very nurturing, kind of had did have kind of like that motherly instinct and stuff. And when you have that motherly instinct, then it is easier, I think, and very easy. And there's a wonderful part of that, which is, I'm going to help people. I'm going to maybe fix people. And sometimes it can be hard to recognize that maybe this is somebody either I can't fix or I shouldn't try to fix.
Is there a possibility, one of the questions, let it be summer, would she have come to see Casey as an innocent man, or could she have just put that aside because he was meeting her needs or something to that effect?
That is such a great question, because I have absolutely interviewed people who, in spite of just overwhelming evidence, just continue to believe somebody was innocent. My educated guess is that she, on some level, completely knew that Casey White was guilty of what he did. He even confessed and said, I murdered this person. So I don't think that she was under this illusion that he's been framed or this is all a misunderstanding or whatever. Plus, she's been in corrections for 16 years. So I think what she did do, though, was what another kind of strategy that people who get involved in these relationships do, is they kind of go, I'm not going to think about that. This is in this person's past. They're changing, or I'm changing them. And our relationship is different. It would never happen to me. This is a totally separate thing.
Yes, I've seen that time and time again. It's never going to happen to me.
Exactly.
These are all great questions in the chat. You guys could just keep them coming because, even after the live stream, we'll be scanning the comments down below. And I want to just take a moment to ask everybody here, close to 1,200 people, if you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to Crime Time with DutyRon. Hit that notification bell. And also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all one word, DutyRon. We're also on TikTok, believe it or not. We're not dancing on a pole on TikTok. We are uploading our crime videos there. So
Darn it.
It's not, yeah, I'm sorry, Doc. And consider going on over. It's all linked in the description. Dr. Joni Johnston's YouTube channel is here. It's Unmasking a Murderer, I believe. I have my notes scattered all over the place, but she's got a great YouTube channel. I'm going to be pushing her to put more content on there. So yeah, thank you so much for everybody being here and putting in the comments. And Donna Lee, listen, I saw your comment up earlier and I put it up. Doc, she said that, being in the nurturing type that we're talking about, Vicky, being a fixer or being someone who wants to help people. She put a comment up, breaking Casey White out of jail was not helping him. It was hurting him or harming him. Any thoughts on that from either you or Ed?
I don't know that I can see that. And the only reason I'm saying that is because this person truly did have little to lose here. I mean, she's the one who had everything at stake. Everything at stake. And so, yes, he's facing additional charges, but I think the capital murder charge he's facing certainly overshadows that.
Yeah, I don't see that either. She didn't tell her brother, she didn't tell her mother anything about this. Everything was, she didn't articulate any of this to them, and she obviously didn't care about the ramifications that her actions were going to have on them when she made this decision.
My thoughts and my feelings on it is this. I feel like she knew what she was doing was wrong, and she still wanted to do it. Her mind was set, whether it was him mind controlling her. I feel like she knew deep down inside breaking him out was against everything that she stood for the past 16, 17 years while working there, and a combination of 25 years in Lauderdale County in some shape or form in public service. So I think she really knew what she was doing was wrong, but she didn't. Her want and need to do it overrode the reality of what she was doing was wrong. And I feel strongly that is an extreme possibility, and that's why she hid it from her mom. She hid it from everybody. You heard the district attorney; they were shocked.
Absolutely. I was giving a talk recently about kind of red flags in relationships. And one of the things I said, and we're talking about domestic violence in particular, but when you start hiding things from your friends and your family, people who care about you, whether it's things that person said, things that person's done, that is such a red flag. And it's often an early one because something is wrong, right? For you to start hiding those kind of things.
Yeah, 100%. Ed, you see anything in the chat?
Okay, I saw.
She wanted to be with
What's
Casey,
the
end of story? Look at that.
Okay, and what is this one here? What's the psychology behind Casey allowing himself to get caught?
That is an interesting one. One of the things I flashed on was that the comment he made, I think it was back in 2015 when he went on this crime spree and tried to, murder his ex-girlfriend, and said that his biggest regret was he didn't kill her and he didn't get killed himself in a shootout.
Right.
And so it does make me wonder, given what was coming up for him, if he really had a plan. I almost got the sense that on some level he knew this wasn't going to go that far. and he was kind of taking it one day at a time and enjoying that time. And he was very clear, although it didn't turn out that way for him, right? That there was going to be, as we keep coming back to this kind of blaze of glory, it was kind of a suicide by cop thing. And he was going to end up getting a shootout and getting killed. And I really think that was his plan. How conscious it was for Vicky, I'm not sure about, but I think for him, I think he may have anticipated that and maybe even wanted that.
Yeah. Great points, Doc. I want to play your intro to your channel because we're getting close to the hour mark here. So I'm going to cue it up if you don't mind. I know, this is, off of her YouTube channel, but I want everybody to see the introduction. And this is from a few years ago, but I love it. I played it over and over again today. I was listening to it, and I've listened to some of the content that she's put up even recently. And there's some fabulous stuff. So let's watch this and listen to what the great Doc has to say about her YouTube channel.
Welcome to Unmasking a Murder, a show about the psychology of crime. I'm Dr. Joni Johnston, a clinical and forensic psychologist, private investigator, and true crime writer. I've been interested in the criminal mind ever since I read Helter Skelter, a book about Charles Manson and his cult while on vacation with my family at age 14. The goal of this show is to go behind what happened and take a look at why it happened. I hope to bring my experience in prisons, jails, and forensic hospitals, along with the available research and compelling cases, to explore murder, why it happens, how it happens, and what we can do to prevent it.
Awesome. I love it.
Welcome to Unmasking a Murder.
We don't want to play it again.
Yeah.
Technology, Doc.
I know.
It's a great intro. I love that because it really covers everything all in one little 40-second piece. So that was good. That was great for the start of your channel. And I think that a lot of people here are going to go over tonight and subscribe. Let me put Ed on because I think he has a special guest everybody wants to see. He just picked up a new puppy the other day. So let's go full screen with Ed and show Kara.
Okay, Kara, say hi.
Look at her. She's
Say
adorable.
hi, Kara.
So they picked her up in Pennsylvania yesterday or the other day, and this is day 2 at the Wallace home. So she's adorable.
She is beyond adorable. Oh, she really is.
What kind of dog is that, Ed?
It's a red lab.
Red. Wow.
Yes.
You think of labs and you say golden, like
yellow,
yellow,
brown, black, chocolate, but there is a very rare breed of red labs.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay.
She's been good. I heard her crying a little bit, and that's why I said, let's get her on.
Say goodbye.
So yeah, again, we all have questions. Ed, with the green screen, it's like,
I know.
We can't see her licking your ear right now, but she's adorable. We all have these questions, and it's so great that you took an hour out of your time on a Tuesday night to come in and explain to the audience, some of the inner workings of forensic psychology. And we didn't really, we'd have to sit here for 5 hours to really go into it. But Casey White and Vicky White captured the heart and tugged at the heartstrings of everybody across the world, almost sort of Gabby Petitio-esque, like the actual attention that it was getting. It was just tremendous.
Yeah.
Can you look at these two cases and come up with why are these such an amplified the sets? These are two, completely different situations, but also control and command comes into play on the male's part here. Any comments in regards to that?
That really is true that both of those cases got so much attention. And I think with the Gabby Petitio case, there were so many factors. One, they were so active on Instagram. They were kind of living their van life in a very public kind of way. I think that's one thing that contributed to it. Obviously, Gabby was just an adorable young woman who was full of life. And so we all kind of were rooting for her, and we got to see again some of the videos of what happened when she was the whole police stop when the domestic violence report came in. And so I think so many of us, and I'm a parent myself, and I mean, I know I identified as a mom of a child who's close to that age. And so I think when you see that kind of thing evolve, it just really pulls at your heartstrings. And I think the case we're talking about tonight, that Vicky and Casey White case, it is very different. And I think there's almost a movie quality of that in terms of how could this really happen in real life? I mean, don't we want to see this in a movie where you have this corrections officer who's upstanding or whatever, and all of a sudden she runs off like Bonnie and Clyde with this inmate and that kind of thing? And so I think there was that part of it initially, in terms of not understanding it, but also, like I said, it just being something that's stranger than fiction almost. And that was also very compelling.
Yeah.
It was like they were going to get their 15 minutes of fame and go out in a blaze of glory, and then they would be remembered forever, immortalized in what they've done in the annals of history. But somebody would probably pick that up and make a movie out of it, or a TV show.
Yeah.
We may be seeing this in a few years. I know. I mean,
I definitely see it as a Netflix or some type of something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you bring up some great points there, because there's just so much to this, and there's so much shock value. Like, how could a woman who has an executive career in the correction field, there's not many women who are even in the police field where they're up in the high ranks. Now we have in New York City a female police commissioner. I think that's the first time, right? God bless.
And a female fire commissioner.
A female fire commissioner and a female police commissioner, first times.
Mm-hmm.
So when people look at Vicky White and they say, she had everything. She was towards the end where she could just retire and enjoy at 56. Most people don't get to retire at a young age like that. So she had an opportunity to either work or retire, and she had a home. She had a lot of things going for her. So that's why I think so many people, men and women, are confused by it. Many people don't even believe that she killed herself. Yeah. I have people in this chat, and I've seen countless chat messages go by asking me to ask you, do you think she really killed herself? And we know from the medical examiner's report and the science that she did, in fact, kill herself. Any thoughts on that one, Doc?
I can certainly understand why somebody would have those questions. I mean, certainly given Casey White's history, that would be a huge question. But I'm convinced, and I know the forensic evidence suggests that, or kind of confirms that she is somebody who just would not be able to, or was not willing at that point in her life to face up to what she's done in terms of the consequences that were coming. And it's such a tragic story all the way around, really. I mean, not only in terms of Vicky, and because I do believe that if she had had a couple of people in her life that she trusted, that she talked to, that she was more open with, that they might have been able to pull her back, because it sounded like that she was so enmeshed in this relationship that it was just the two of them, and nobody even knew what was going on. So she had no other perspective, right? No other person to kind of go, what are you doing here?
Right.
Look at this, this, and this.
No one to reel her back in. And
exactly.
So he's going to go back to prison, and in the prison lifestyle, he's going to be deemed a hero.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hey guys, I wanted to read this. This is from our Australian friend Revenge. She says, "Good day, DutyRon, Ed, and Dr. Johnny. So great to hear your professional stance from Australia. Thank you. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate the super chat, the support, and the kind words. Dr. Johnny, she's just tremendous when it comes to this stuff, and we're gonna beg and plead with her to come back again with us, right, Ed? We need more of her.
Well, I enjoy it so much, and I said this last time. You have just the most amazing group of supporters. They're always so positive and just so encouraging and just really loving, and I love coming on the show. So that's a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I encourage everyone now, when we wrap it up, go down and look in the description. There is a link to her YouTube channel. I put your LinkedIn in there too, and whatever I could find. So there's a slew of her stuff linked in the description. I will pin a message in the comment section with a link to her YouTube channel. I want to make it easy for everybody because so many people want just to be able to click on something and just go on over to it. So it's a clickable link. I'll put it in the description and I'll make a pinned comment in the comment section. And I'm sure the great doctor will maybe at her earliest convenience scan through your questions and comments underneath this video. So I encourage you to send messages to her like you do with Ed and I.
I will definitely do that. I will definitely do that if anybody has any questions after.
Excellent. Excellent. Ed, any final words before we wrap it up and we'll finish up with the doc?
No, it was an enlightening show. I learned a lot myself and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah. Every time I have, well, both of us have these special guests, we learn new stuff and it's great. Doc, anything for the troops?
I guess, again, just thank you for having me. And, you know, I've really been, I guess would encourage everybody to kind of look at this case and be open, I guess, to all the different possibilities. Because I think one of the things I do feel like is that I don't think that one decision that Vicky White made was a terrible one and had such poor judgment. And I know it did put like a black mark on corrections officers. I don't think that defined who she was as a person.
100%. I agree wholeheartedly. We have to keep our minds open and we have to realize that there is more to the story. You know, it's what we hear and what's being reported. And there's stuff behind the scenes that we'll never, potentially never find out about. So we have to keep our minds open. We have to be open to other possibilities and things of that nature. And that's very well said. Guys and girls, as I always like to end these shows, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. And God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all victims of crime and their family. We send them strength, prayers, and positive vibes. On behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we thank Dr. Joni Johnston for coming and spending time with us. We hope we'll see her again really soon. Good night from New York. Somewhere in California. I think she's
San Diego.
San Diego. I love San Diego, the Gas Lamp District and the Convention Center. I've been many a times down there. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, but it's coming into the June gloom.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Yeah.
So I've been there too. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Stay safe. All right. Stay prepared. Watch your six.
Good night from New York. Thank you for joining.